ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this exclusive interview. In a developing story, German prosecutors have asked Poland to arrest a Ukrainian diving instructor suspected of being involved in the 2022 Nord Stream pipeline explosions. While the Nord Stream blasts have sparked accusations between Russia and the West, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has firmly denied any involvement by Ukraine in the incident. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss these new developments and their broader implication is Gary Tabach, former Chief of Staff, NATO Military Liaison Mission in Moscow. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Thank you, Benjamin Lee. It's always a pleasure to be here.
All right, but this is going to be a little bit of a tricky topic as a lot of information coming out is still speculative. But first of all, I would ask you what you make of the latest claim linking this Ukrainian diver to the Nord Stream explosions.
It's very strange for me to hear that. And as you said, it's a diving instructor. It sounded like he's a diving instructor somewhere in Bahamas. He rented the scuba diving equipment and dove and blew up a Nord Stream. This is very strange. And of course, on what basis do you want to arrest a Ukrainian diver or a Ukrainian military man? What have they done wrong? Blowing up a Nord Stream? Well, I don't know if Germany needs to be reminded that there is a war going on against Ukraine, and Ukrainian people are fighting to defend their country. We promised them, General Milley and our Secretary of Defense with Ramstein 1 promised that we're going to turn the sky and the earth and we're going to give them everything. And in 2 years, at that time, 2 years into the war, was nothing. Sanctions from hell. There were no sanctions, and it's not working. Russia is only accelerating in killing and destroying an entire nation while we will observe it. Of course, Ukrainians are supposed to defend themselves. We see that today in Kursk region, they're trying to defend themselves, and to accuse them of what? Even if Ukrainians were involved in such operation, what have they done wrong? As you pointed out, now there's a doubt on the reliability of Russian gas in Europe. Whether they can trust Russia or not. Those sanctions should have done that. And if they're not doing it, Ukrainians do it themselves. And again, President Zelenskyy denying that their involvement in it. And as far as I know, we're still in the West. You're supposed to be proven guilty before you're arrested. We're proven guilty before you ask another country to arrest another citizen of a third country. Show some proof, so show some just to request an arrest of a man without any basis because you suspect him on something. I don't think it's a good idea. And again, suspected of what? Defending your country, defending and stopping killing your people. What if it would have been your country? What if it would have been Germany? Would Germans do the same thing or not? So I don't think even though President Zelenskyy denying it, it was done by the Ukrainian special operations. It's kudos to them. Great job. Congratulations.
All right, and given that Sweden and Denmark, they have also concluded their investigation without identifying any suspects, of course, the whole thing seems a little bit even more muddy, isn't it?
Well, it seems to me that it is more political again, as always, where, the same thing that Europeans and the European Union and the International Court accused Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Gallant in conducting some kind of terrorist operations, just like blowing up this pipeline, rather than accusing and demanding for the terrorists to stop their activity. Or we should all collect ourselves together and force them to do that. Force them through strength, rather than accusing the ones that trying to defend themselves. The Ukrainians did not start this war. If Putin would not have invaded Ukraine, that pipeline would have worked just fine, and the Germans would have had plenty of gas and plenty of oil. It was the Russians who started this war. It was Putin who started this war. There should be no accusation towards Ukraine in any form, just like in Israel. Israel did not start this war. So we're tending to somehow accuse and function against the democracies. and taking a side of tyrants for some reason. So, and like you said, Benjamin Lee, they concluded the investigations, but they are not telling us the results, except that Germany now is demanding deportation of a Ukrainian citizen from Poland, where he is, of course, was not in Poland. So I think this is just some sort of a hype. I don't think Ukrainians did anything wrong in this case.
Right, you mentioned that a lot of these decision and investigation results, as called it, is probably more political than substantial. Do you think this might actually fuel some of the voices that are more reluctant to assist Ukraine in this war to kind of take a step back and pull out some of the support and strengthen the stances of these people if they're somehow convinced that Ukraine is somehow at fault behind this?
Well, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are in power, who have interests in Russia, who have huge investments in Russia. Russia is a huge, rich country, and they have no interest in defending Ukraine, or they're politically, socially closer to socialists. They're socialists, which Putin is. Putin is a leftist ideology of a socialism, or what Nazis were. National Socialism. That's what, the abbreviation for National Socialism is Nazis. So they're more closer to them and their ideology than to the free world or to people like Elon Musk or those other capitalists that are around the world. So they probably in some sort of agreement or in some sort of cahoots with Putin.
All right. And how do you think Russia might exploit these allegations to further its narrative with the ongoing conflict? This probably gave them a lot of fuel to kind of push their side of the narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. They're trying to say that this was a terrorist attack, that it was a terrorist action. Let me tell you something. If my country would have been attacked the way Ukraine is attacked, I, as a military man, would have done the same thing. I would have tried to interrupt that because in this case, Germany is collaborating with Russia. Germany is giving a lot of money to Russia, with that money, Russia is able to continue and conduct this war. With the oil prices that are today, Russia will be able to have this war forever until Ukrainians will just bleed out. So Russia will, and it's being successful just by seeing what's going on right now, and by what Germany is doing is demanding the extradition of this man, of this diver. They're saying that this is a terrorist act. It is not a terrorist act. Personally, no civilians have suffered in it. It was specifically a military operation. I don't know who has done it, but I know that one individual couldn't have done it. Not one diver, not two divers. It was a large military operation that was able to blow up the Nord Stream, which caused damage to Russian economy, which caused damage to those European countries and European businesses that support Russian war against Ukraine.
All right, and ever since the stretching of this war into its second year, we've heard a lot of terms like war fatigue and people starting to be very wary of the war dragging on. Do you think if this narrative is getting popularized at some point where perhaps there is involvement that is sabotaging the energy transport, that's, well, kind of adding to the energy woes, they would actually kind of polarize the society even more on this topic, where as some of the support is already waning for Ukraine, might even have a stronger voice to kind of push back against these support. Are we looking at an even more divided society because of this incident and how it's being portrayed?
Well, if I can correct, it's a third year into the war.
Right.
So 3 years.
Time
And
flies.
no, that's okay. And of course, there's a fatigue. Of course, there's a fatigue. Of course, that people are exhausted. Of course, there's a lot of damage to Ukraine. I'm in Kharkiv right now. That city is really, really damaged. Remind you that during World War II, it changed hands 6 times between Germans and the Soviets, and there was no such destruction to the city. There are towns that are being wiped out and their kids are dying, and there's a lot of damage. There's going to be energy sources, so people do get tired, and the Westerners get tired, of course, of it as well, because there are budgets, there are deficits, there's ecological damage, there's a threat of a nuclear attack. People are very nervous. And wars tend to do that to people. Wars tend to cause PTSD to not only to military men, but to public as well. So, but on the other hand, the Ukrainians are doing everything possible to turn the tide and to turn the West and to get the West's attention on their incursion into the Kursk region, taking the war to the Russian side. We've talked about it before. Now it kind of gave a morale boost to the Ukrainians and to the world. They're showing that Ukrainians are willing, able, and capable of beating the Russians and taking the war to them and fighting for their country. They're not willing to give up. They're not willing to lose this. So we should pay attention and we should help them to do this. But again, our politics in Europe, and of course politics in the United States today before the November elections, cause not helping the situation in Ukraine and in Russia. Everybody's realizing that things may change very soon, for better or for worse.
Right, and speaking of timing, you also mentioned that the push into Kursk really give Ukraine a significant morale boost. And then this kind of accusations start popping out. So I'm just wondering, the timing seems a little bit fishy. Do you think there's any correlation there, or am I thinking too much?
It's very difficult to have a program with you because usually I argue with journalists. It's difficult to argue because you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. The timing's just perfect because they're trying to divert the attention from Ukrainian success. They're capturing a lot of conscripts, the Russian units surrendering to them. People are not rebelling against the Ukrainian forces in Russia. They're kind of realizing that they're fighting the right cause. It's the timing is to divert. So now they're all of a sudden they brought up something that happened over a year ago, and saying that they want the Germans for some reason want a Ukrainian diver. Why? On what reason do they want the Ukrainian diver? One man didn't conduct this operation.
Right, so thank you so much for all your input and insight. Of course, everything is still speculation at this point, but that does give us a lot to think about and analyze. Really appreciate it, Gary. Thanks again for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And with that, we conclude this edition of our interview. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.